advantageous for them and for the whole population. But, so let's start with the politician. So they feel that they can't do it because it's too much money and their voters will think they are squandering money and they will not re-elect them. Now, the only thing to do now is to tell the voters that they're wrong. And of course, you don't tell the voters that they're wrong because then they will never listen to you again. So what we did, Explore Mars Incorporated, we organized a scientific national survey. We hired the right organization to do a survey like that. We hired an organization to help us pose the questions. But there was one thing we were adamant that should be part of the very first start of that survey, which was of course done online. We're talking 2013. We wanted people to have the opportunity to express what they thought was the percentage of NASA's budget compared to the federal budget. And there was a slider. They could slide between 0 and 6. They got to, on average, to 2.47, so 2.5. Now, at that particular moment of time, when we asked in 2013, it was 0.43, so not even half a cent on the dollar. And the moment, and the nice thing, of course, if you do a survey, that's not paper, but, that's online, the next window people get, it will then tell them it's 0.43. And then you start asking questions. And what that did, it gave the audience that reply to this survey the leeway and the advantage of knowing how much money they were really talking about and whether it would be bad for the education of their kids or, the roads in America or whatever they were talking. And so they felt that they could now freely express what interested them. The next question we asked, in 20 years' time, this was 2013, so in 2033, do you believe that humans will walk on Mars? And actually, no, we were more specific. We asked, do you think Americans will walk on Mars? And 74% of the respondents said, sure, 20 years' time, Americans will walk on Mars. Okay, well, Congress, if your voters believe that, you better make it happen. Now, there were some other questions. And there's another thing that Congress also, representatives, always, senators told me, my voters are not interested in science. Well, that survey proved them wrong. Because when we asked Americans, why? One, we did ask them, do you want to go back to the moon? Do you want to go to an asteroid? Do you don't want to do human spaceflight at all, or not? No space flight, period. Not even with robots. What do you want? 5% wanted nothing. Okay, the 95%, most of them said, no, not an asteroid, not the moon, but Mars. And then you start asking, why do we do it? Would that be also okay if NASA is not the leader in this international undertaking? And they said yes. Strangely, when we asked why, one of the things they could pick was, of course, to show America's greatness in space. They actually didn't pick that. 66%, so 2/3 of them, picked the answer to know more about Mars. So not even to know more about, us living there as humans. No, to know more about the planet Mars. That's science for science sake. So, okay, that's a good answer. And then one of the other questions was, if NASA's assignment.
Maska Metal Detox. Formuła z glikoaminą neutralizuje metale i zapobiega złamaniom włosów.
Bank jest jednym z największych banków w Polsce. Codziennie korzysta z niego prawie 5 milionów klientów. To są setki miliardów złotych. To są tysiące kredytów, różnego rodzaju operacji. To wszystko zbiega się w naszym systemie centralnym. Bez tego systemu nie ma banku.
Przez lata opieraliśmy się na architekturze mainframe'owej. Architektura dobra, stabilna, ale mająca swoje ograniczenia. Zdecydowaliśmy się wymienić platformę, serce naszego banku detalicznego.
Taki projekt wymiany systemu centralnego jest bardzo wrażliwy i tu naprawdę nie ma miejsca na błąd. Nie ma miejsca na to, że coś nagle zacznie działać wolniej, że transakcje zaczną się przycinać, że karty przestaną działać. To są bardzo ważne rzeczy z punktu widzenia klientów.
Dzięki temu projektowi ograniczyliśmy koszty systemu centralnego o ponad 60%. To ponad 10% kosztów całego IT. Uzyskaliśmy to dzięki migracji naszego systemu centralnego z platformy mainframe na systemy rozproszone oparte o x86 i .NET.
Nazywam się Michał Hoffman, jestem wicedyrektorem w departamencie IT w banku. Kluczowym momentem było wdrożenie kompilatora COBOL.NET oraz takiego narzędzia JCL Runner. Pozwoliło nam to na utrzymanie jednej linii kodu. Mogliśmy dzięki temu prowadzić migrację stopniowo, bez Big Bangu, zachowując przy tym ciągłość działania banku.
Szliśmy w tym kierunku, żeby system przenieść na nową platformę takim, jakim on jest i takim, jakim on będzie. Mieliśmy możliwość ciągłego dostarczania nowych funkcjonalności dla biznesu, ale takie podejście miało też swoje minusy, bo za każdym razem, kiedy udało nam się uruchomić jakąś wersję systemu, w międzyczasie doszły nowe funkcjonalności i musieliśmy to powtarzać. W naszym żargonie nazywaliśmy to gonieniem króliczka.
Nazywam się Agnieszka Stus. Obecnie jestem starszą menadżerką w banku odpowiedzialną za obszar płatności. Możliwość kompilacji programów COBOL do tego nowoczesnego środowiska programistycznego, jakim jest .NET, pozwoliła nam ten system rozwijać dwutorowo, równolegle, zarówno w COBOL-u, jak i w języku C#. To z kolei otwiera drogę do nowej architektury. Różne biblioteki pisane w różnych językach programowania współdziałają ze sobą w jednym środowisku i to daje nam ogromną elastyczność.
Zastosowaliśmy metodę podziału danych zwanych shardingiem, co pozwoliło nam połączyć świat mainframe'a z systemami rozproszonymi bez przerw widocznych dla klienta. Dzięki temu mogliśmy migrować klientów krok po kroku, bez widocznych przerw.
W projekcie było wiele zakrętów. Najtrudniejszym było zderzenie z wynikami testów wydajnościowych. Stanęliśmy przed ścianą, której wydawało się, że nie możemy przebić. System nie był w stanie udźwignąć pełnego wolumenu klientów. Przymierzaliśmy się do migracji klientów i wyszło nam, że jak będziemy migrować w starym podejściu, tak jak to zaplanowaliśmy, to będzie trwało wieki.
To był swego rodzaju wstrząs. Byliśmy już na zaawansowanej fazie projektu i nagle okazało się, że jest ryzyko, że system produkcyjny tego nie udźwignie. Zaczęliśmy zastanawiać się, jak podejść do tematu. Postawiliśmy na migrator online.
To była kolejna spektakularna rzecz, która się w projekcie wydarzyła i dzięki temu mogliśmy tak naprawdę z minimalną liczbą wyłączeń tygodniowo grubo ponad 100 000 klientów po prostu nie wyłączając banku przemigrować ze starej maszyny na nowe środowisko. I to, co zrobiliśmy na koniec, no to już jak mieliśmy 0 klientów na mainframe'ie, po prostu wyłączyliśmy tą maszynę i wypięliśmy z tego całego układu.
Było to trudne wyzwanie i wyzwanie bez precedensu. Mieliśmy bardzo dobry zespół technologiczny. Myślę, że taka kombinacja, dobre wsparcie, dobra ochrona, świetny zespół i bardzo ambitne wyzwanie, no to jest taka mieszanka, która w odpowiednich warunkach, a takie tutaj stworzyliśmy w banku, no może dać ten sukces, który udało nam się osiągnąć.
Atom był projektem, który dosyć często testował granice cierpliwości i zaufania, natomiast na koniec dnia potrafiliśmy działać jako jeden zgrany zespół.
To doświadczenie uczy nas pewnej pokory wobec technologii. Nie da się wszystkiego przewidzieć, nie da się wszystkiego w 100% przetestować, ale można stworzyć taką kulturę pracy, gdzie zmiany są dobrze przemyślane, a ich wdrażanie na produkcję jest bezpieczne. Jako menadżerka starałam się zasiewać w ludziach nowe spojrzenie na technologie i narzędzia.
Wszyscy starali się udowodnić, że niemożliwe nie istnieje. Koniec końców wszyscy wiedzieli, że robimy coś, czego jeszcze nikt nie zrobił. Wiedza o tym, że będziemy pierwsi, dodatkowo motywowało ludzi.
Ja mam taką perspektywę, że my wszyscy rozwijaliśmy się tym projektem razem. Każdy jest w innym miejscu niż był na początku.
Można powiedzieć, że zmieniliśmy nie tylko system, ale też nastąpiła w nas zmiana.
W tym momencie mamy system centralny, który jest oparty na nowoczesnej technologii. System, który możemy skalować. Jesteśmy w stanie w razie potrzeby zmigrować ten system do chmury. Jesteśmy w stanie sprawnie i szybko realizować nowe projekty. Jesteśmy, ośmielę się powiedzieć, jednym z niewielu banków na całym świecie, który ma naprawdę nowoczesny system centralny.
Zrobiliśmy naprawdę coś mega wielkiego. Wymieniliśmy rdzeń banku bez zatrzymywania jego pracy.
No to jest rzecz, która napawa dumą, bo gdyby to był łatwy projekt, to byśmy go nie celebrowali. Tego projektu nikt nie zapomni.
assignment by Congress is to put humans on Mars. What can we do with the NASA budget? And then 54% of the respondents said if putting humans on Mars is the ultimate goal, the ultimate assignment of NASA, I'm fine with doubling the NASA budget. Now it can go from 17.7 to over 35 billion. And it's not there yet. So with this report, you go into Congress and you say, this is what your voters want. What we did, we printed this report, and we went to each and every one of the 535 congressional offices, and we spoke with them, and they read it, and then policy changed. Because through this survey, they suddenly had the population had told them it's okay, spend money on. The amount of money we're spending on NASA is fine. And they had also said, it's half a penny on the dollar. We're fine with spending a penny on the dollar, because that's basically what the audience said. From that, NASA said that there are going to be human missions to Mars. From that, we as Explore Mars kept pushing in Congress, etc., to get it enacted in law, which happened in 2017. What's interesting, Explore Mars is actually named in that law, which is like, okay, we're done well. Now, what's also interesting, you could say 2013, you asked the general public, and it was a very well done scientific, it was completely balanced. 51% of the people who had done the survey were female, 49 were male. They were, all kinds of ethnicities in America. They were living anywhere, not just the big cities on the west and east coast, also in the middle, also Hawaii, Alaska. Everyone had been surveyed. Like I said, scientific survey. Now, we redid it in 2016. Same numbers. Then Business Insider redid it in 2018, without us knowing that they were going to redo it. Same numbers. So this tells the congressional officers that they actually have permission to do this.
Aren't they afraid of China? They have this straight line of policies. They don't change each 4 years.
Well, actually, the fact that policies aren't changed that much also has to do with us going into Congress and talking to them. Because otherwise, it would. But people also don't understand. In Europe, we have the European Space Agency. Please.
Widzimy tu jednoznaczny dowód superszybkości światłowodu od plusa, urozmaicający codzienny byt pustych gniazd. Głowa rodziny w rozrywce, bez zacinek. A mama spokojnie ogląda swój serial i też nic nie zacina. Ty też chodź do plusa i sprawdź, co możesz zyskać z plus światłowód.
Listen to what you're saying. Space Agency. Okay? In America, you have the National Aeronautic Space Administration. What's the difference? Well, an administration gets an assignment from Congress and simply has to administrate the money and the policy. An agency, just like the word says, has some agency and, can have some push also with cabinet members of various countries to where are we going. And America doesn't have that. That means that unless Congress tells them to do what they have to do, it's not going to happen. Because they're not allowed to say, we think this is a really good idea. They're not allowed to tell me what they need. I go into Congress and I have to figure it out for myself. Thankfully, I'm very good at that, but still. Because there are all these rules and regulations. I can't be paid for what I do, so I do it as a volunteer. I fly to America on my own dime. I stay on my own dime. I do everything is on my own dime. I take a group of volunteers with me, and I'm actually not the one organizing it. It's someone else within Explore Mars who organizes all these visits. I simply get a list of what offices I'm supposed to go to, and then I go there. And and it's fun. Do you know why it's fun? I'm Dutch. I'm in American Congress, and I'm telling the American policymakers what they're supposed to do. The greatest fun is, of course, they actually listen. And so it's like, and I must say, at first, in the first few years somewhere, because I started this in 2006 or 2005, I would tell people going into offices that I'm not an American. I haven't told them that in the last 10 years. I hear myself say things like, our great nation, our president, and my brain then goes like, I actually have a king. It's funny, and someone has to do it. And what you need, and that's why I'm unique for this, you need to be not too deferential to senators or to representatives in the House. Because if you are, you're not daring to tell them what they have to do. And being from the city of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, I have no qualms about telling someone what to do. I don't care who you are. If I feel that this is the right policy and I can, back up what I'm telling you, I will tell you, and I don't care who you are. The Emperor of Japan, I will still tell you what I think. And not because I want to be impolite, but because I feel that every citizen of this planet is entitled to her or his opinion, and to also voice that opinion. I come from a democracy, a real democracy, where I could say awful things about the king right here on stage, right here on camera, and I wouldn't be put into jail. Because, I'm entitled, as long as I say I think, and then say whatever I want to say, I'm entitled to my opinion. That's what democracy is. So you do this. It works smartly, slowly. And you were talking about, constellation, and they changed their mind. Well, in one of these rounds before 2013, I went into Congress, and they were still talking about, changing the plans again. And I remember walking into a senator's office, and the chief of staff came out, and he was supposed to talk to us. And he said, I really have very little time, really very little time. And I said, that's fine. I said, pick a destination, pick a vehicle, stick with it. And I stayed silent. And he was expecting me to say more, but I didn't. And he said, that's it? I said, yeah, that's it. And of course, I want you to pick the destination Mars and not the moon. Let's be clear about that. But I can live with you picking the moon, picking a vehicle, a architecture to get us there, and sticking with it for the next 10, 15 years, instead of changing your minds every so many years, throwing away all this money. And we're not going anywhere. We're not closer to the moon or Mars by doing that. So yes, as far as I know, he spoke to his senator, and he probably literally told him this, because I know that Congress then decided that, let's, pick a destination, pick a vehicle. And even it wasn't still not going to Mars at that particular moment in time, at least they were no longer, trying to build something and then throwing it away, which was, progress as far as I was concerned. So, if you're talking about why 50 years, like I said, politics, and someone had to kick them into shape. And I happened to come along because someone organized these meets at the congressional offices, and I happened to be in Washington for a Mars conference, and I said, oh, that's interesting, and I went, and I actually took my kids, my two daughters. I put them in a nice shirt, a nice blouse, and a jacket, and of course jeans. I mean, they were young. They were, I think, 12 and 16. And I took them with me to all these offices, and of course they were grumbling, we don't go. Now they're 28 and 32, and they say, that actually was really interesting because they saw something that very few people see, even Americans, let alone if you're not an American, like you're Dutch. They've seen how it works, and and no American thought it was strange because they probably thought those were my interns. I didn't.
Tysiące produktów w supercenach i lekkie raty.
Bezpłatny odbiór w ponad 600 sklepach. Kupuj jeszcze taniej z aplikacją Media Expert.
Szybkie i wygodne zakupy w supercenach w Media Expert i na mediaexpert.pl.
So I didn't tell the officers this were my girls. I just had two young women with me who were also doing the rounds. And so you do this, you think, oh, this is fun. I can make a difference because all my life, you know what my motto is: one person can make a difference, and therefore should. Here again, I felt that I could make a difference, so why not do it? And if you do these rounds, you get these people that come back as volunteers every year. And, it's kind of like a big extended family, and it's fun. And, you get some of the offices you do often. Adam Schiff is an office which I've done often. And, and it's because we always were, of course, I don't have a senator, I don't have a representative. And I said, well, I'll pick Adam Schiff. I like JPL. That's my representative. And so it's... And for everyone. And that also goes here in Europe. Because we do good things here in Europe. The Sentinel missions, the Copernicus program, that's really useful for planet Earth. I always say if my tax money needs to be paying for something, then these big satellites that give us valuable data to then, manage Earth better, or shipping, or growing plants, or whatever, the climate. That's great. I mean, that's one of the few times that I go like, oh, it's fine that you use my taxpayer money for that. I really see a use. And I'm also fine that anyone on the planet can take the data and then build a business around it. And it doesn't need to be European. I think that's a good thing, because I think as humanity, we need to go to that level, that we, build things for Earth that then benefits us all. And it could be taxpayer money of Europe or taxpayer money of South America, of various countries, if they would come together and do this. True, but still, the idea that we only work for Poland or the Netherlands or only for Western Europe, I think that's wrong. We're one human race. We have to make it work. I mean, this climate change tells us that we really need to come together and make it work. And so why not? And if space can be a vanguard in that, that's good. Show the world that it is possible. Show the world that we can have an ISS, even if, if there is, kind of a cold wind blowing through, more cold than there is now. Of course not. I mean, this at the moment with this war between Russia and the West, because it might be fought on Ukraine soil, but it is about Western ideas and non-Western ideas, dictatorship. And so, it is... These are all things that are worthwhile pursuing in space, and therefore we should try to convince our leaders. And not, like I said, not just in Congress, also the European Committee, also the European Parliament. I don't care, the Council of Europe. If I can get them behind me, because most people forget about them, but they actually make policy too. I mean, if we're talking about something that's dear to my heart, the safety of women, not being battered as a housewife or in the street or because there's a war. The Convention of Istanbul, which was written by the Council of Europe, not by the European Committee, not by the UN, but by the Council of Europe, and which is international, even if it's called the Convention of Istanbul, and which regulates very strictly what is battering of women, also psychological or even monetary battering. So it's much more than just, sexual violence. So that is things that we can do. And I don't care which venue, which group will do it, whether it's the UN or the Council of Europe or the European Committee or, I don't know, the World Health Organization. If things get done, in community and in unity, that's good. Because that's where we need to go. It's what every astronaut will tell you from looking down from space. I see no borders. There are no borders. So,
Okay, and you said choose destination, choose your spaceship, and it's SLS. And a lot of people says that it's a step back, in fact, because we have this old technology reaching out to the STS program. We have a rocket that basically some people says will fly 3 times, and then what else we have? Perhaps Elon Musk, perhaps not. Some people says that SLS is just jobs for people, for voters, and so on. So we are doing something. We are getting back to the moon. We have this 3 Artemis missions plan, but is it really going on, or are we just stepping around?
the SLS is only part of the whole architecture. You have this capsule that could be on another rocket. It doesn't need to be on the SLS. You have this whole idea of setting up shop.
Marriage is a real opportunity to have a powerful life. What more is there? Some people want more. I'm building her future. Nothing can go wrong. Not now.
Nie zmieniaj banku, zmień kartę na Zen i kupuj sprytniej. Sprzedawca coś kręci? Masz wsparcie Zen. Gwarancja na elektronikę? Zen przedłuży ją za darmo. Twoja karta to potrafi? Zmień kartę na Zen. Zamów w aplikacji na zen.com.
Shop on the moon, not just, going there, taking some pictures, going back home, which means that, the fact that we're now using a rocket that might in the end not be the best choice is, as long as we're moving. Because if we're not doing this with this rocket, we're not doing it at all. Because the Congress at the moment will not say, oh, yeah, we'll just, right now, without the SLS, we'll do it with SpaceX. They might in future. But right now they wouldn't. And so keeping these needle moving is important, especially since, the whole public only sees the rocket. But that's like, I don't know, it costs a lot of money. It's very complicated. But if you're talking about mission architecture, all the rest, I'm on the moon now. I need a rover, a pressurized rover, like a bus that I can drive around in so I can do big distances as an astronaut. That is not impinged by the fact that there's an SLS. I need to decide, how am I going to grow food? Because it's too expensive to just keep sending food there. We're going to say, we need a spacesuit that's much better than what we have now, because that's really too ungainly. It's very hard to manipulate the gloves. So we're building that, SLS or no SLS. We're talking about how to live there. Are we going to, tunnel underground? Are we going to have, I don't know, some kind of landers? And then not the landers of the 1969 Apollo 11, because that was just, it's like a dragonfly. It's very beautiful, but very fragile. Mm-hmm. And it was very small, because I've heard that Neil and Buzz, when they were changing into their suits to get outside, they kept, kicking and hitting each other, because there wasn't really enough room to get in your suit. Mm-hmm. So we definitely not going that route. So
Neil apparently broke something, even
no doubt,
a gog or something like that.
Yeah. And then they needed to use a pen. I think Buzz Aldrin then invented that he would use part of a ball pen. I know. So there's so much architecture, so much things that are worked on by so many universities, small companies, big companies, countries. Because if something can be done, then other countries will, think about it. Thales Alenia Space is thinking about the rover, the pressurized rover. I'm not saying they are building it, but it might be something they could do. And what I do advise Europe is not to, let's say, be the manufacturer of the windows of the bus or anything. What I advise Europe is to build something like a rover, which is a completely self-contained part of the mission, which is then European, instead of just being, part of a bigger machine.
So what's the problem? Money? Attitude? We are some
Attitude and direction.
little Europeans, so we could just
Attitude and direction, yes. Attitude, definitely. I can see, especially where, if you look at the Council of Ministers discussing what the European Space Agency and what Europe needs to do, yes, there's a lot of politics going on. Politics is driven by civil servants, never a good idea, because civil servants tend to be very careful